Good morning. Did you know that the human brain weighs 8 pounds? Actually, that's wrong, you little brat. First of all, it's the human head. And second of all, it weighs 11 pounds, not 8 pounds. But that's not that exciting, right? Because what are we talking about here? We're talking about 3 pounds of tissue for the brain. We're talking about another 8 pounds of tissue for the head, right? Hard bone weighs a lot. So it's 11 pounds. That doesn't do anything for me. What about the fact that if you lined up all the blood vessels in the human body, it would circle the earth 4 times? Now that's some good stuff. By the way, good morning. As most of you know, my name is David Rendelstein. A lot of people call me Dr. R. I do this every Monday. This mostly goes out to my client base from FinTech Weight Loss. But like and share this because I think it's going to be interesting content. We're going to be going over today some amazing facts about the human body. It's fun. It's incredible to learn about, but there's also a deeper significance. And we'll discuss that as well. Not right away, though. But as I said, like and share. And I got to tell you something. I'm always hearing from people, you go on live at a terrible time, 10 o'clock Monday morning. I can't listen to it. Everything is archived, people. Everything is here on Facebook, on the FinTech Weight Loss page, on the Nutrimos Central Jersey page, also on the FinTech Weight Loss YouTube channel. So listen in your car. Listen while you are cleaning up. I mean, it should be a podcast because then people might not be so confused. I should put it out in a podcast. But that's when you're supposed to be listening to this stuff. When you have better things to do. This is not necessarily appointment television like Game of Thrones. But we do have some fun. We do talk about some interesting, useful topics. So let's get back to it. I want to talk about amazing facts about the human body. I'm reading some of these off. I will comment at times. At times I won't comment. I'll just read it. I might roll my eyes if it's just silly and, not significant or useful in any way. The first is that we contain trillions of bacteria. This is endlessly fascinating. Okay, bacteria are those little bugs. It doesn't say this here, but we also contain trillions of viruses. So basically, we should look at it together, right? Viri. We can contain trillions of bugs. Here's what's interesting about this. A few years ago, a lot of people heard about the Human Genome Project. Human Genome Project was when a bunch of eggheads got together and decided, okay, we are going to map all of the genes in the body, and this will be useful. Well, you had another group of nerds, and they said, you know what? We are going to map all the bugs. It was called the Biome Project. It was less well known, but what came of it was maybe more interesting. It's estimated that we have about 37 trillion human cells in our body. I mean, these are numbers we can't get our heads around, right? Just if it makes it easier for you, just think of the largest crowd you've ever seen and multiply it by like 1 billion, right? But we have all these human cells, and the cell is basically the smallest functional unit in the body. It's what makes us up, right? It's the little bricks that build this great building, this great structure. But for every human cell we have about 100 non-human cells. I mean, the numbers are mind-boggling, right? And that's these disgusting, filthy bugs. It's why we can't win the war against bugs. It's why, antibiotics aren't the ultimate answer to everything. It's why some of the policies that we used during COVID were arguably pretty silly. These things are tiny, they get all over. We apparently have entered into a covenant with bugs as human beings because they help us. They can hurt us as well if they get out of control, right? But basically, you know, blah, 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 breaking in this new tongue. Bugs have a huge effect on our immune system. They can contribute to diseases like arthritis, but they can be very helpful. Again, we have this relationship. We could not survive without them. All right. Factoid number 2, your eye is your fastest muscle. Who knew that? That's why they say things like in the blink of an eye. Something happens in the blink of an eye, it happened pretty damn fast. Fastest muscle in the human body is the eye. Okay, we talked about the fact that there's 100,000 miles of blood vessels. By the way, I'm reading this off of a site. I'm not going to tell you which it is because then I will not be very useful to you. You could just look it up yourself. 100,000 miles of blood vessels in the human body. Now, this includes things that you are aware of, right? Arteries, veins, but also the really tiny ones, little capillaries, right? The reason is because every cell in our body, I think, at least human cell, needs that oxygen supply and the nutrients from the blood. So that's why, you know, if you took a look at any piece of tissue, any organ, there are these microscopic blood vessels. So they can get to where they need. They can get the blood to every tissue and every cell in our body. Amazing. 100,000 miles. Again, circling the earth 4 times. All that's inside of us. All right. Hey, did you know that only 2% of humans have green eyes? I did not know that. Only 2%. If you would have asked me, I would have said probably 20% of humans have green eyes. All babies are born with either blue or brown eyes. And then some of them kind of morph somehow. Most people with green eyes are from countries like Ireland and Scotland, etc. But anyone could have green eyes from any culture, any ethnicity, any race in the world. But it's only 2%. So my friend Nika will be happy about that. Okay. Now, all humans, it turns out, are over 99% identical. The visual differences or internal variations that occur in us are only due to tiny variations in genetics. But we're basically the same. We're actually really super similar to other animals as well. So you are an animal. I hate to tell you. Your 3rd grade teacher was right. Okay, factoid number 6. I don't think we're numbering them, but the skin is our largest organ. We don't consider the skin an organ usually, right? Some of us intuitively know the importance of taking care of our skin. For many people, it's a matter of aesthetics. Obviously, good, tight, toned skin portrays youth. And nobody wants loose or saggy skin. Nobody wants like blotchy skin or what have you. But the skin accounts for about 15% of our body weight. And its importance is massively underappreciated. Dr. Foster said that herself. Okay. It obviously keeps everything inside. It defines who we are. It's the outside border of who we are, but it does a lot more than that. It helps with temperature regulation, touch, sensation. Okay. It allows us to move without restriction. Imagine our skin was too tight. Like, let's shrink it all down to a quarter of what it is now. I mean, obviously, that would be tough to move and be flexible. Okay, so that is the miracle of our integumentary system or our skin system. Okay, here's an interesting fact, and I'm glad you can't see the pictures of this because when we breathe, we favor one nostril. I'm glad you can't see the picture because it's basically an upshot of a guy's nostrils, and there's a bunch of hair pouring out, and it's pretty gross. We all have that hair. That's a whole fascinating subject in and of itself. I told you this stuff is endlessly fascinating. And it's just fun to talk about and think about. But I guess we favor one nostril, and there is a physiological and evolutionary purpose and reason for that. But whatever, I'm not that excited about that. Hey, are you yawning right now? Are you bored? If you are, just please know something. We do not know why we yawned. Science has not figured out why human beings yawn, or other animals, right? We all know that other animals yawn as well. Those of us who have cats and dogs see that every day. But it's a mystery. There are theories. You know, I guess the number one theory is that when we yawn, it allows us to take in more oxygen. That makes a lot of sense. But we don't know why for sure. Okay. Here's an interesting fact. Your eyes remain almost the same size your entire life. Now, that's only interesting when you contrast that with a couple of other sense organs. So your nose and your ears continue to grow your entire life. So as we age, we start to look more and more like Alfred E. Newman. Look him up, kids, if you're not sure who that is. If you're my age, you know who Alfred E. Newman is. But they continue to grow. Ears, nose, eyeballs, they stay the same size. And this is why we consider babies so cute. Because they have the same size eyes as they will when they're adults, but the face is so much smaller. So now they have these big doe eyes. And that's considered a cute and attractive quality. All right, moving on. Now, here it says something that I'm not even sure if it's true. It says that we erase and we reform our memories. Now, this one is a little weird. Like I said, I'm not sure that it's true. But I'm reporting it, I guess, as a fact because that's what the article says. But it says that we imagine that when we remember an event or something in the past, it's like playing a recorded file in a computer. But actually, our brain rewrites the memory each time we think of it, slowly altering or changing it over time. So in other words, we're not just reporting. We're not just pressing the button and, having that Memorex play. If you remember Memorex. What we're doing is we're reforming it each time. So I'm not sure exactly how that works or if that's true. I mean, it seems like it's stored somewhere, at least the idea of it, and then maybe we add to it as we try to recall. I can't say for sure. That's why it seems a little weird, right? But I guess the interesting take home here, I heard an expression once. You're never too old to have had a happy childhood. Now that's fascinating in the sense that we have people who are in constant grief and angst about their childhood and how bad it was and how it keeps on affecting them throughout their whole lives. And yet we can clearly reinterpret it. We can remember it differently. We touched on this last week about how we can just choose to see whatever experience we want since we have a myriad of experiences. But some people's GPS is so focused on the bad ones. So it's really interesting. I mean, this has to do obviously with neurobiology in some way. But as I said, I am somewhat skeptical. Okay. Here's something you may not know. You're actually taller in the morning. I guess that makes kind of sense, right? During the day, we're sitting and we're standing and there's a compression force. And that's why when I wake up, I'm about 6'8", and then I'm about 6'2" in the early evening. All right. Did you know you can't breathe and swallow simultaneously? Try doing that. If you don't believe me, try doing it. No, I wouldn't try. But this has an evolutionary function, which is that we don't want to choke. So when we're swallowing something, we can't breathe at the same time. And this is, I think, one of the mechanisms of cough drops. Because when we're sucking on that candy, every once in a while we have to swallow. And if we're swallowing, we can't cough. That's pretty cool. All right, moving along. Every second, now this is something. Every second, you produce 25 million cells. Every second, you produce 25 million cells. Can you get your head around that? There is a constant process of reinvention of our cells, of regeneration. We don't think of it that way. And the question comes to mind, if that's the case, how are we aging? Well, that seems to be part of the plan, that we do age, that we do ultimately, we do the big regeneration, right? Where we become worm food, and then we can contribute to other life growing from that. But it's an incredible concept. And another reason that is given, this is kind of the physiological reason that's given for why we age, is that when we're reproducing our cells, when we're regenerating them, 25 million a second, each time we're kind of getting a copy from a template. So every time that happens, it kind of wears out the template a little bit, right? Think if you had a mold, and every time you use the mold, it would make little changes to it. And eventually the mold's not good anymore. And what it produces is not good anymore. So that's kind of the physiological reason for why we age. There are people, I can tell you right now, who are trying to figure out how to have this not happen. So we will not age, or we will not age at the same pace. And we'll live to 180 years old. Or we'll be like Methuselah and however long he lived. How long did he live? 800? 1,000 years? I mean, something just crazy like that. At least that's what was reported. Okay, we're not sure about that. Moving on, I'm not done. I have another article here that brings up some other fascinating fact. This can go on for a long time. And like I said, I mean, literally, I could probably just do this for the next year or two. I don't think I will, but I could. And for those of you who watch me on occasion, you'll know that while I often start off with something that seems far afield and has no relation to what I do or what you ultimately want to have happen, most people who come to see me want to lose weight. Ultimately, I try to funnel it down into some kind of an important take home. And if you stay with me, I promise I will be doing that. But first, more fun trivia. Okay, so your mouth produces about 1 liter of saliva each day. So you know those liter bottles? That's how much saliva that we're making each day. I think I want to talk a little bit about saliva, actually. I don't want to do it right now, and I hope I don't forget, but let's continue on a little bit, okay? It says your brain is sometimes more active when you're asleep than when you're awake. Well, no shit. I think most people know that, right? Most people know someone who walks around as if their brain is not functioning at all. And you can only assume that when they're dreaming, it's kicking in. Okay. The word muscle, I didn't know this. The word muscle comes from a Latin term meaning little mouse, which is what ancient Romans thought flexed bicep muscles resembled. So if I had muscles like I used to, I would flex my bicep. And you would see it would curl into a nice little ball that I guess resembles a little mouse, according to the ancient Romans. They were a weird bunch. Presumably, they spent too much time in bathhouses. All right. This I like. Bodies give off a tiny amount of light that's too weak for the eye to see. Right now, sitting there, your body is giving off some light and not visible to the human eye. It could be detected using various forms of technology. Now, this has some metaphysical consequences or significance, or at least it does to some people, right? I mean, it's just a fact, but it's really interesting. And the other thing about that is when we conceive of the body, I think we mostly conceive of it as a mechanical device, and it certainly is that. But it's also an electrical device. And we can see, if our eyes were acute enough instruments, we could see where the light kind of is on that electromagnetic spectrum. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. There are practitioners out there who kind of deal with the body more energetically than they do mechanically. Some of them are considered way out there. And maybe they are, or maybe they have better insight into what's really going on than some other kinds of doctors. Okay. But let's put a pin in that concept of the body as a machine. And let's touch on that again. I got to write these things down so I don't forget when we're talking, because there was something else I wanted to. Oh, saliva. I want to get back to saliva. Okay, but first, let me tell you this. The average person has 67 different species of bacteria in their belly button. Gross. Why do we procreate? How does relations happen? Knowing these things, I think there's more in our mouths than that. I don't understand. Okay. You lose about 4 kilograms of skin cells every year. Now, I cannot do the metric system. I'm of an age where they try to teach me the metric system in school. Like every other American, I rejected it outright. So I cannot tell you how many pounds 4 kilograms is. Unless I contact Mr. Google here. So let's see what he has to say. I assume it's a he. How many pounds is 4 kilograms?
4 kilograms is equivalent to 8.818 pounds.
8.8 pounds. So pretty much 9 pounds. Every year we lose 9 pounds of skin cells. The dust that accumulates on things that we have to wipe off, that is mostly made of dead skin cells sloughing off of our bodies. Okay, more grossness, but fascination. This I did not know. I wouldn't have believed this. It says babies don't shed tears until they're at least 1 month old. I mean, they're constantly crying. So they're crying without tears until they're a month old? Are they faking it the whole time? Manipulative little petri dishes. Okay. Oh, this is cool as heck also. Information zooms along nerves at about 400,000 miles per hour. I hope you're starting to get this idea that we are amazingly incredible machines. Our bodies are. So there's a lot going on in the body at any one time, right? There are a lot of processes happening. There's actually, I think, in the billions at any one time. That's an overwhelming number. And it's amazing what can be processed and what can be produced because that's all happening simultaneously. But the control and coordinating center of our body is our brain and our nervous system. The brain is actually, we think of it as being confined just to the cranium, and it sort of is, but it's sort of not, because it's pretty much one piece with the rest of the nervous system, with the spinal cord and with all the nerves that go out and communicate to every single cell, organ, and tissue of the body. And those messages go out at 400,000 miles an hour. You ever been amazed at your own reflexes, at your own response time? Maybe you're driving and, there's a car that looks like it's going to hit you and you're able to get out of the way. Or you see Olympic athletes and how fast they are, whether it's running or, striking and what do they do? Taekwondo in the Olympics. Whatever it is, if you've ever been amazed by that, this is one of the reasons. I mean, 400,000 miles an hour, the communication is going along the nerves. It's incredible. Also incredible, and this is why your doctor is worried about your heart and your heart health. The human heart beats more than 3 billion times in an average lifespan. 3 billion times. We don't take any time really to consider that throughout the day. It's happening automatically. It's controlled by a part of our nervous system that we don't have to think about. But consider this. The average is the human heart will beat from 60 to 120 beats per minute. Okay. 60 beats times 60 minutes, that's 3,600 beats. Multiply that by 24, that comes to whatever that comes to. And that's just one day. So it's what, a few 100,000 in a day or something? Is it that much? 3,600 times 24? No, it's over 100,000 in a day. Multiply that by 7. Multiply that by 365, right? Or 52 if you're doing it by week. So the numbers are overwhelming. I don't want you to start yawning. As you know, if you're yawning, you can't swallow. So put down your food. But it's just the heart in and of itself, if you knew nothing else and you knew that, and how that's sending down, oxygen and pumping it throughout our body so we could have energy. That's amazing. Moving along. Your left lung is about 10% smaller than your right one. I don't care that much. I mean, sort of whatever. If I had to guess, I would assume because the heart kind of slants that way. But did you know, excuse me, human teeth are just as strong as sharks' teeth? If we're going to get energy in our bodies, we have to masticate. I said masticate, people, with a C. We have to chew our food. We have to break it down into small enough pieces so then the rest of our digestive system can take over and break it down into still smaller pieces and still smaller pieces. And then it could reorganize those pieces and turn it into tissue and convert it into energy. It starts with the teeth, and that's why our teeth are so strong. We have to be able to tear through, whether it be flesh or hard nuts or vegetables, what have you. Strong as shark's teeth. Next time you're in the water and a shark threatens you, you show him your teeth. Okay. Scientists estimate that the nose can recognize 1 trillion different scents. Is that true? I mean, it's an estimation, so what does it mean? But I guess the spectrum of what we can smell is considerably more than we thought. You know how dogs sniff each other's butts? Dogs' noses, as far as I know, are a lot stronger than ours. And they do that to get information. I don't know what kind of information comes from sniffing butts. You know, maybe it's a complete health assessment and some kind of a mental health screening or something. I don't know. But maybe we have that ability or used to. And thank God we've evolved past it. 1 trillion different scents? Are you kidding me? I mean, if we sat down, how many could we name? 100? But again, I guess our noses are more sensitive than we thought. One thing I do know about scents is that they're very evocative. Nothing brings you back to a time or a place or an event like a scent can. Think about that for a minute. You know, whether it was your first kiss or your first rock concert, we know what that usually smells like. I mean, it can take you right back just smelling something familiar. All right. Did you know, speaking of young love, humans are the only species known to blush? Blushing in and of itself seems like a subject I want to delve into. I mean, I want to learn about. I mean, something is going on there physiologically, but there's also a big emotional component. Embarrassment, the feeling of being exposed in some way. Yeah, what's going on with that? How did that develop? It's pretty interesting. Your blood makes up about 8% of your body weight. So think about that. You're a 200-pounder. 8% of 200 pounds, 16 pounds. 16 pounds of blood in you. It's not nothing. So I went through both of these kind of articles. You can Google it. You can find out a lot more. I can. And I find myself, the more that I'm looking at this, the more I want to. And this kind of leads me into what I want to talk about next. I mentioned saliva before. I used to give a lecture to patients as a chiropractor. And I said, if you want to understand health, and remember, understanding is a prerequisite for accomplishing. Without being an expert, if you want to understand, if you want to begin the process of understanding, understand earwax. I said, this is the secret to health, earwax. Now, earwax has a more specific name. It's called cerumen. If you have the exact right amount of earwax, it will help prevent infections. If you have too little earwax, then you are vulnerable to infections. If you have too much, you cannot hear. So something that we consider disgusting and distasteful, and if we see someone picking their ear and flicking it, God forbid, is super important. And not only is it super important, it is a custom-made substance that is perfectly suited for its purpose. Now, multiply cerumen by saliva, by snot, by the liquid and crust that ends up in your eye, by sweat, by all these gross, disgusting things, phlegm, that we don't talk about in polite company. And realize that each of these things are also custom made with a specific purpose. The exact right amount will be functional. Too much is no good. Too little is no good. So the perfect substance in the perfect quantity, and that will help create health. Now, we haven't even gone past the face, because then you multiply all of those fluids by your hormones and blood and everything else that's created in the body. And again, some of it is also gross. We want to get it out of the body. The purpose of some of those things is to get out of the body. And now you realize that when you're talking about the human body, you're talking about a machine, the likes of which we still cannot create with our hands. Humans were apparently designed or figured out that if they want to increase impact, if we want to increase our impact, our effectiveness, our production, if we want to multiply our abilities, we need to make machines. We studied about this in social studies. Eli Whitney, the cotton gin. Automobiles, the steam engine, right? I mean, these machines are a part of our lives. Nowadays, the machines are more and more impressive, to the point where eventually they may be able to surpass the human body, but not yet. It's likely that the machine that's most similar to the human body is probably like these gigantic cruise ships, because they are entire cities in and of themselves that can do everything. They have the functions of the human body. Not only them, you can say the same thing about cars and airplanes and even huge cities and what have you, but they have the ability to take in information, right? To collect information, to make decisions about that information. I mean, that's done in the, what is that thing they called? That's the control center of the ship where the captain is, and he's looking out upon the ocean. I don't recall what that's called, but that's the brains of the operation, right? So they have the ability to take that in, but they also have the ability to provide food, to provide energy in order to move. And actually, I'm not sure how self-sustaining they are. I'm not sure that they don't need things from the outside, although I guess we need substances from the outside also, food, water, etc. We can produce our own energy, but we do need those substrates, fancy word for raw materials, in order to do that. So you have these incredible cruise ships that have everything on board that you could ever need, from haircutting salons to nightclubs, entertainment and food, and there's everything there. I cannot think of the perfect metaphor for what the human body can do, because we are also able to collate information. We're also able to make decisions. Some of them are from our conscious control. Others happen automatically. We have incredible detection systems. We have systems that can fight off invaders. We are able to produce so many different substances that provide for life, for the continuation of life. It is still the most amazing machine that's ever been created. And here's the take home, and here's where we funnel it down into how this information could be used by an individual. If the machine is not working well, if the machine is not working as it should, one of the big reasons, is not necessarily mechanical. That doesn't mean it doesn't result in mechanical dysfunction. But it means that just as if our car is not working well, there's probably at some level some fault or responsibility on our part. We haven't treated it well enough. There's a problem with the relationship. And I think that's the case with a lot of issues that happen with the body. We've fallen out of relationship with our bodies. And as a result, when you have that kind of disconnection, by various mechanisms, and this is something that I'm telling you that may sound like kind of a hippie idea, but I think this is a known thing, and I can tell you stories. Someone who speaks to people every day. One story that comes to mind is a family member of one of my clients. He had an emotional trauma, and soon after he was diagnosed with an autonomic, an autoimmune disease. He had a shock, there was a disconnect, and this disease developed really fast. Okay. So this idea may sound weird, but disrelationships, disconnection does result in changes in our physiology, in our chemistry inside, in those delicate balances that we're trying to create. And I think a good place to start to rehab those things is interest. Whenever any relationship is not as it should be, interest drops. And that happens with our bodies as well. And frankly, it's hard for the interest not to drop. After a while, we take it for granted that we have these bodies, that every time we have a cut, it's going to heal. And if we're not interested in our bodies, we're probably not going to do the right things. We're not going to have that good relationship. And I think that is do we want to call it a hidden factor of disease? But a good place to intervene is by re-experiencing, redeveloping interest in the body. And that's why we looked at some of these amazing facts today. Because when you look at it, there is plenty to be interested about. Can this be a first step in repairing that relationship, that all-important relationship? I hope so. And that's my wish for everyone. So that's going to be it for today. I will see everyone next week. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. As I said, this can be listened to. You don't have to sit in front of me, in front of the screen. You don't have to look at me. This could be listened to in the car while you're doing some other things. Make sure you have at least a little bit of attention on what we're discussing here. I think it's worthwhile. But I will see everyone next week. Take care.